wondered if an entire world could be forged from a single body? It sounds like something straight out of a horror story, but for the ancient Norse, this was the brutal reality of their creation myth. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most brutal and imaginative creation myths of all time, the story of how the cosmos was literally built from the remains of the giant Ymir. And trust me, this blueprint for creation is far more gruesome than you can possibly imagine. So picture this: before anything we know existed, there was nothing. Or, more accurately, there was the great void, Ginnungagap. Flanking this abyss were two distinct realms. On one side, the fiery realm of Muspelheim, overflowing with sparks and scorching heat, and on the other, the icy expanse of Niflheim, shrouded in bone-chilling cold and dense fog. When the intense heat of Muspelheim finally met the frigid ice of Niflheim, the colossal glaciers began to melt. From these primordial, thawing waters emerged the very first living being, the colossal frost giant, Ymir, and alongside him, the cosmic cow, Audumla, whose nourishing milk sustained the giant. Our tale begins with the colossal Ymir and the primeval cow, Audumla, an unlikely pair, it would seem, to usher in the cosmos. Ymir's very existence depended entirely on Audumla. 4 rivers of nourishing milk flowed from her udder, more than enough to sustain the colossal giant. But what sustained Audumla herself? There wasn't a blade of grass in sight, only an endless expanse of salty ice. So the cow did what came naturally. She licked. She licked the hoarfrost and the colossal blocks of salty ice, drawing sustenance from them. But this was no mere act of survival. Within this seemingly simple act lay hidden the genesis of a new power, one destined to reshape creation itself. On the first day, as Audumla's vast tongue swept across the ice, strands of hair began to emerge from the frozen mass. Just hair, nothing more, protruding from the icy depths. By the second day, an entire head had materialized from the ice, and as the third day drew to a close, the cow had licked a complete being entirely free from its icy prison. It was a man, magnificent and powerful. His name was Buri, and he was no giant. He was the first of the gods, the forefather of the mighty Ymir, a lineage destined to defy the primordial chaos itself. The arrival of Buri marked a pivotal moment, yet alone in this icy world, he needed to ensure his lineage continued. In time, a son was born to him, named Bor. Though Bor was neither a creator god nor a mighty warrior, his role in the unfolding saga would prove crucial. He became the vital link. Bor took Bestla, a giantess and daughter of the fearsome giant Bolthorn, as his wife. This union between a god and a giantess symbolized the fragile balance between the emerging races. From Bor and Bestla, 3 sons were born, whose names would forever echo through history: Odin, Vili, and Ver. These 3 brothers became the first of the Aesir, the gods destined to bring order to the nascent world. They were strong, wise, and ambitious. With their arrival, 2 opposing forces finally solidified within the cosmos. On one side, the frost giants, chaotic descendants of Ymir. On the other, the young gods, descendants of Buri, eager to create and shape the world. Their coexistence could not be peaceful. Conflict was inevitable. However, the young gods and the giant Ymir simply could not coexist in the cramped confines of the nascent world. Ymir was the living embodiment of primeval chaos. He didn't build or create, he merely was. And as he slumbered, from his vast form, like noxious weeds, sprouted an endless stream of new frost giants, creatures savage, brutish, and utterly untamed. Odin and his brothers gazed upon this sight, and knew, upon such a foundation, no harmonious world could ever be built. Any spark of order they might attempt to cultivate would be swiftly consumed by this overwhelming, sightless power. Chaos couldn't merely be contained, it had to be extinguished entirely. The brothers then made the most terrifying and world-altering decision in all of existence. They resolved that for creation to truly begin, its chaotic progenitor had to be slain. Chaos had to perish, so that order might finally be born. And so, the 3 brother gods, Odin, Vili, and they confronted the primordial giant, the progenitor of all life. This was no struggle for power or dominion, for such concepts had yet to take form. Instead, it was a foundational clash between the nascent forces of creation and unbridled chaos. Ymir was immense, his strength raw and untamable, a primal force of nature. But the gods possessed intellect, unwavering will, and a singular purpose. They fought with furious intensity, and at last they managed to overpower the colossal giant. Thus, the first act of violence in the cosmos was committed. Ymir, the primordial being from whom all life would eventually spring, fell by the hands of his own distant progeny. The profound silence that had enveloped the boundless void was now shattered only by the torrent of blood erupting from his mortal wounds. This cosmic drama had begun with an act akin to fratricide, imprinting the very fabric of the nascent world with the indelible themes of sacrifice and violence. Ymir's death was like a dam bursting. Blood gushed from his countless wounds in such a monstrous torrent that it flooded the entire great void. It was a veritable blood-red deluge of cosmic proportions. The frost giants, Ymir's direct descendants, were utterly unprepared for such an event. Creatures of cold and ice, the scorching blood of their progenitor, became a deadly element for them. Almost all of them choked and drowned in these crimson rivers. Only a single pair managed to survive. A giant named Bergelmir and his wife, however, managed to scramble into a wooden box, which served as their ark. Aboard this makeshift vessel, they rode out the deluge. From this sole surviving pair descended all subsequent Jotun giants, who would become the eternal adversaries of the gods. Thus, the First Great War concluded with the near-total annihilation of an entire race. When the bloody deluge receded, a grand spectacle unfolded before the gods. In the heart of the cosmic void lay the lifeless colossal body of Ymir. Chaos had been vanquished, but in its wake, only emptiness and grim remains were left. It was then that the brother gods conceived a plan both ingenious and gruesome. They decided not merely to dispose of the body, but to repurpose it as building material. Quite literally, they seized Ymir's immense form and dragged it to the very centre of Ginnungagap. This marked the beginning of the greatest construction project in the cosmos. The victorious gods, transformed into cosmic butchers, ready to dismember their ancestor. From his parts, like divine building blocks, they would assemble a new world. The ultimate act of creation began with a profound desecration. The gods' first task was the flesh. Ymir's colossal muscles and fat became the very substance from which the solid ground was forged. Odin, Vili, and they began their labour. Like titanic sculptors, they moulded and shaped the very contours of the land. Smooth, unbroken stretches of muscle became boundless plains. Where the flesh was rough and jagged, hills and valleys took shape. They quite literally sculpted the earth with their own hands from the body of their foe. Every step taken on this nascent land was a step upon the remains of the first living being. The entire world, the very foundation of all future existence, was built upon a bedrock of dead flesh. It was a world born from death, and that legacy would forever bear its mark upon it. With the land now formed, it was time to fill it with water. The gods didn't have to search far for the material. Ymir's blood spilled during the primordial battle was immeasurable. It had pooled in vast puddles and lakes within the lowlands, which were formed from the giant's very flesh. The gods then channeled these rivers of blood, carving out riverbeds and shaping deep basins that would become the future seas and oceans. Thus, the entire hydrosphere of the planet, from the smallest stream to the boundless ocean, was forged from the blood of their first foe. This vast body of blood then encircled the newly formed land, creating an insurmountable barrier that separated the ordered world from the chaotic realms beyond, home to the remaining giants. Ironically, water, a universal symbol of life, in Norse myth originated as a stark symbol of death and primordial violence. The flat, fleshy land and blood-red oceans still felt incomplete. The world lacked definition, a sense of verticality. It was then that the gods turned their gaze upon Ymir's colossal skeleton. His gigantic bones, they realized, would be the perfect material for crafting mountains. The brother gods took femurs, ribs and vertebrae, thrusting them deep into the soft flesh of the earth. From these, they raised impregnable mountain ranges and towering peaks. The larger the bone, the higher the mountain grew. These bony peaks pierced the heavens, shaping a majestic yet stark landscape. They served not merely as adornment but as a skeletal framework solidifying the nascent world. No longer was the landscape a mere flat expanse. It was now a complex, multi-layered structure. Each towering rock face stood as a silent testament to the titanic skeleton that formed its very foundation. After fashioning the colossal mountains from the giant's largest bones, the gods were left with a multitude of smaller skeletal fragments. These included Ymir's teeth, shards of his jawbones, and splintered joints. Discarding such precious raw material would have been utterly wasteful. Acting as resourceful stewards, the gods knew exactly what to do. They gathered every last fragment and generously scattered them across the entire earth. This is how boulders, stones, and coastal pebbles came to be. Every stone a traveller stumbled upon, every boulder resting in a field, was, in truth, a tooth or bone fragment of the first giant. The world became increasingly rich in detail, growing ever more textured and realistic. Even the most minor elements of the landscape carried within them the memory of that primordial sacrifice. The earth lay prepared, but above it stretched only the vast, gaping void of Ginnungagap. The nascent world needed a canopy, a firmament to cover it. For this purpose, the gods chose the most fitting part of Ymir's colossal body, his enormous skull. With immense effort, they hoisted this gigantic bony dome and set it firmly above the nascent world. The four corners of this celestial vault, however, needed support to prevent it from crashing down. To achieve this, the gods ventured into Ymir's decaying flesh, where the first creatures, wriggling worms, had begun to stir. They selected 4 of the strongest among them, transformed them into intelligent dwarves, the Dvergar, and positioned them at the 4 cardinal points. These dwarves were named Nordri, Sudri, Austri, and Vestri, north, south, east, and west, respectively. Upon their shoulders, these 4 dwarves have, ever since, borne the immense weight of Ymir's skull, our very sky. The firmament crafted from the skull was in place, yet it remained empty, dark, and utterly lifeless. The gods, with their characteristic grim ingenuity, devised a solution. They cracked open Ymir's skull and meticulously scooped out his brains. This grey matter they then hurled high above, towards the sky's highest dome. As the giant's brain fragments scattered across the vast celestial expanse, they began to transform into clouds. From that day forward, every cloud we witness, be it wispy cirrus, puffy cumulus, or dark thunderheads, is but a remnant of the first being's mind. They drift across the sky, constantly shifting shape, like the restless, turbulent thoughts of the slain giant, hovering eternally over the world forged from his very body. This bestowed upon the sky not only beauty, but also a profound and unsettling significance. The earth had been formed, mountains stood tall, and oceans crashed against its shores, yet its surface remained stark and barren. It was a lifeless canvas, utterly devoid of vegetation. Once more, the gods turned to Ymir's massive body, seeking a solution. They took his long, thick hair, which had covered both his head and colossal frame. Wherever they scattered handfuls of these dense locks, thick, impenetrable forests sprang forth. Where the hair was sparser, lush meadows emerged carpeted with vibrant grass. According to the myth, even the tiniest moss clinging to rocks was once a single hair from the giant's body. Thus, all the world's flora, from towering trees to the most humble blades of grass, sprang forth from the hair of the slain Ymir. The world was quite literally burgeoning with life, a vibrant tapestry woven from dead matter. The world was nearly complete, yet shrouded in a dim twilight, yearning for light. It was then that Odin and his brothers looked to Muspelheim, the primordial realm of fire, which had existed since the dawn of time. From its depths, a constant stream of sparks and molten embers flew forth. The gods set about gathering these fiery fragments. The largest and most radiant sparks they fixed upon the cosmic vault, bringing forth the sun and the moon. These were ordained to traverse the sky in a precise order, marking the passage of days and nights in ceaseless succession. The lesser sparks the gods merely cast across the vast skull vault of the heavens, giving birth to the stars. No longer was the cosmos a bleak expanse. It now shimmered with a myriad of lights, bestowing upon the world illumination, warmth, and the ability to track time, thereby transforming primordial chaos into an ordered, harmonious system. Even after the world was forged and illuminated, the gods knew it remained a perilous place. In the desolate, icy wastes at the edges of the newly formed world, later to be known as Jotunheim, lurk the descendants of Ymir, the sole surviving giant. These Jotuns harboured a profound hatred for the gods, posing a constant and grave threat to the fledgling creation. To safeguard the central, most inviting and fertile expanse of their new world, the gods conceived a brilliant and deeply symbolic solution. Once more, they turned to the colossal remains of Ymir. They carefully extracted his thick, bristly eyelashes, or, in some tellings, his mighty eyebrows, and from them constructed an immense, impregnable fortress wall. This colossal barrier encircled the heart of the world, forging a sanctuary. Thus, a realm was born, destined for future inhabitants, and it was named Midgard, meaning middle enclosure, or Middle Earth. And so, with the foundational work of creation now complete, the gods noticed movement within the decaying remnants of Ymir's flesh. There, within the decomposing matter, stirred by the nascent sun, countless white worms began to squirm. They swarmed throughout the remains, the very last spawn of the dead god's body. But Odin and his brothers saw more than mere parasites. They recognized potential. The gods chose not to destroy these creatures, but to imbue them with a new purpose. They granted the worms' intellect to shape them into human-like forms, and instilled in them a profound drive for craftsmanship. Thus came into being the dwarves, or as they were also known, the dark elves. Born from the very flesh of the earth, they were destined to dwell beneath the surface, in caves and mountains, becoming the most skilled smiths and miners throughout the cosmos. The world had been created, populated by dwarves beneath the earth. But on the surface, in the beautiful realm of Midgard, it lay empty. One day, three gods, Odin, Vili, and Ve, though later myths often name Hönir and Lodor as Odin's companions, were walking along the seashore. Their gaze fell upon two trees that had been washed ashore by the waves. One was an ash, the other an alder. An idea sparked within the gods. To complete their creation, they took these two lifeless pieces of wood and decided to fashion the first humans from them. From the trunks, they carved two figures, similar to themselves, but devoid of life, reason or feeling. Before them stood only inert figures, waiting for their moment. The grand work of creation was approaching its final, most crucial act, the making of humankind. The gods set about bringing the wooden figures to life. First, Odin stepped forward. As the Allfather, he granted them the most vital gift. He breathed soul and life into them. The wood ceased to be mere timber. Within it, the very flame of existence ignited. Then came the second god, Vili, also known as Hönir. He bestowed upon them intellect and the power of movement. With his gift, the figures gained consciousness, the capacity to think, to understand, and to navigate their world. Finally, the third god, Ve, or Lodor, granted them human form, the gift of speech, hearing, and sight. He gave them flesh and blood, a healthy glow. Thus, the wooden creations gained their full senses, and the ability to communicate. The man, crafted from ash, they named Ask, and the woman, fashioned from alder, they called Embla. From this primordial pair, all of humanity descended. The gods settled them in Midgard, granting them dominion over the entire Middle Realm, which they had so meticulously prepared for them. What truly sets this story apart is its brutal logic and profound symbolism. Unlike other religions where worlds were conjured from nothing by divine decree, the Norse cosmos wasn't. It was literally built from death. Life itself was born from a violent struggle against chaos, and order was sculpted from the very parts of a slain monster. This foundational act truly sets the tone for all subsequent Norse mythology. The deities here aren't all-powerful benevolent figures. Rather, they are grim architects, who themselves emerge from chaos and are prepared to take extreme measures to keep it at bay. Even Midgard, the human realm they so diligently protected, is shielded by a wall crafted from the eyebrows of their very first victim. This serves as a stark, eternal reminder that civilization and order always rest upon a foundation of wild, primal, and profoundly bloody force. And so, from the body of a single giant, an entire universe emerged, from the very ground beneath our feet to the clouds hanging above our heads. Thank you for sticking with this video until the very end. If you found this brutal, yet utterly captivating lesson in creation compelling, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss out on more myths. What do you think is the most insane and creative element of this myth? Is it the skull forming the sky, or the eyebrows creating a protective wall? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.